what if I'm American? Like, what if my soul is American? Because I feel like a workaholic right now. I've been working all day long, well, all night long actually, and I'm like so tired that like my brain is just not working anymore. But I just feel like I can't like end the day with one without one weird history video because these videos are just awesome. Wait, by the way, I bought these glasses in the thoughts of this being like an accessory for my videos, because I don't need glasses obviously, but I thought they would be cute, and they're huge. But these could be my history video glasses. Wait. Someone who's watching me right now for the first time or doesn't know me is probably like, what am I watching? Wait. See? Don't I look like a historian now? Anyways, let's cut to the chase. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to be watching Why Did Jesus Become White? And I'm tired. But why though? He wasn't white. I'm pretty sure he wasn't white. I mean, in that era, supposedly, where he was from, there was no white people. So,
Historians widely agree that Jesus was an historical figure who did exist, but what he actually looked like is still anyone's guess. Considering he was born in the Middle East, you would think he looked like a Middle Eastern man. But that's not how he's usually depicted, which is why today we're going to take a look at how Jesus became white. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History channel. After that, leave a comment and let us know what other topics you would like to hear about.
my guess is that Jesus became white because when white people rewrote the Bible, they just made him white because why not, you know? Because white people were like that back then. Maybe?
Okay, let's do this. Given how devoted most of Jesus' followers were, you'd think it would be important to them to preserve a description of what the dude looked like. But turns out, not so much. The New Testament, in fact, barely describes the physical appearance of Jesus, or anyone else for that matter. And the few descriptors that are in there paint him in some pretty not of this world terms. Take, for example, John's vision of Jesus in the book of Revelation, which states, "The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like burnished bronze. His face was like the sun shining at its brightest." A Jesus with white hair, metal feet, flaming eyes, and a glowing face does sound totally badass, but that was likely
That's. Yes. Yes. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. I mean, blazing eyes and metal feet and yeah, white hair. That looks kind of like God. Excuse me, God. Like not in a bad way. Like that looks to me that looks pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. I vibe with that. I like it.
not the case. This depiction speaks to Jesus less as a human being and more as God. And despite the fact some have tried to make some hay out of the whole feet like bronze thing, scholars widely agree it doesn't speak to his racial makeup. That's because John's imagery was most likely meant in a figurative sense, the white symbolizing purity, the bronze symbolizing strength, etc., etc. Nonetheless, it's frequently mistaken for a literal image of Jesus. Speaking of symbolism, in both the Old and New Testaments, the color white is frequently symbolic of purity. That's why Jesus is often referred to as the Lamb of God. The Holy Spirit is often depicted as a white dove, and God is depicted as a giant polar bear. Or he probably would have been, had the biblical authors been aware of their existence. This ancient association of the color white and metaphysical concept of purity is likely at least part of the reason Jesus came to be depicted as white. That being said, it's also fairly easy to imagine that somewhere along the way, this figurative whiteness was simply misinterpreted as referring to a literal light skin tone. Of course, anyone, regardless of race, can have a conscience so pure that it's metaphorically white like snow. So skin tone doesn't really have anything to do with it. We'd be tempted to dismiss the confusion as an innocent mistake. But the connection between the color white and purity has long been misused to justify racism and slavery. So historically speaking, it's pretty far from innocent.
Yeah, it's still wrong.
If you're wondering why Jesus' followers didn't bother to make physical representations of him, the reason is because they were too busy trying not to get killed. Christians were persecuted by the Roman Empire for several centuries after his death, so his followers had to rely on symbols to represent their beliefs. One such symbol is the ichthyos, or Jesus fish, which you still see today. There was also the Chi-Rho, a monogram of the letters Chi and Rho, known to us as X and P, which are the first two letters in the Greek word Christos, meaning Christ. Unfortunately, what this means is that there are exactly 0 depictions of Jesus from the time when people actually might have accurately remembered what he looked like.
Wow, that's pretty insane though. Like after all of that, like the message still came through pretty clearly. And they ran with it this whole time. But I wish there was like someone like wrote about his looks, but these are things that maybe you don't think that you need to write down, or to and then now we would have, like, back then they would have been probably like thinking like what he looks like doesn't matter, but now we would love to know what like he truly looked like. But I'm guessing if you take the people from that era, from that time, and I'm guessing there's like some people that's been described of their. Oh my God. There's probably some people from that era and from that place that have been described by their looks. I'm guessing Jesus would look pretty near to whatever a person from that era and from that time and from that place looked like, because same race, same time, same there must be something.
The image of Jesus as a white-skinned, bearded guy with his hair parted in the middle comes to us courtesy of 6th century Byzantine artists. Why go in that direction when the earliest depictions show him with a darker complexion? Well, there were a few reasons. First off, as a Jew, Jesus was an ethnic minority. And as you probably surmise from the New Testament, Romans weren't exactly big fans of the Jews. And it probably didn't help that Jesus wasn't a silent minority either. The Bible depicts him as something of a rabble-rouser, literally organizing grassroots efforts to aid the poor and needy against the rich and powerful. And that's probably not the image of God that the Roman Empire really wanted to shout from the rooftops. The Romans preferred their deities to be less radical and less brown, and their preferences directly contributed to the white Jesus so prevalent today. There's also the fact that thanks to the Emperor Constantine's conversion, Christian artwork of the era was mostly being created in Rome. And to deepen their own connection to him, they painted their Messiah as appearing similar to themselves, with European features and lighter skin.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that kind of makes sense too. If there's like nobody has told you what someone looks like, then okay. Kind of makes sense.
As Christianity became acceptable, and then even popular, people increasingly realized that they didn't have any true physical renderings of Jesus. So they did what people do best and just started making shit up. For example, a letter from one Publius Lentulus to the Roman Senate allegedly written circa 14 to 37 CE, which was within Big J's lifetime, claims he was tall, wavy-haired, rosy-cheeked, and blue-eyed. Historians, however, believe there's pretty much no way the letter was written at the time it claimed to be, since it includes phrases and references unique to the 13th century. Several other supposed ancient descriptions of Jesus arose during this time, But like the Lentulus letter, they've all been dated to the Middle Ages, when artistic depictions of a white Jesus would already have become commonplace and influential. And speaking of just making shit up, the Middle Ages is also when many famous miracle images and visions of Christ started popping up all over the place. And in what will likely come as a surprise to no one, those images and visions were overwhelmingly of a white Jesus. One famous example is the image of Edessa, which supposedly bears the image of a white Jesus.
Aren't like nearly all other like Christian or the Bible's people drawn as like white people? Like Mary is white, isn't she? When you go to church and you see her, she's usually white. God is white. Jesus is white. Everybody has been whitewashed. I mean, the Bible has been whitewashed, but come on, like, you could have left something authentic there, because it's like this. Yeah, it's impossible that he would have been white from where he came from, basically, isn't it? So, I might be wrong, but now that I think about it, I think nearly everyone was white. I might be wrong though.
From a towel Christ wiped his face on during his lifetime, and then apparently never bothered to launder. There's also the Holy Face of San Silvestro, the Holy Face of Genoa, and of course the Shroud of Turin. But despite the extravagant claims attached to them, they're all widely dated by historians to the Middle Ages, rather than Jesus' lifetime. Of course, nothing lasts forever, and by the Middle Ages, the Roman Empire had been replaced with papal authority. The time period was marked by the Crusades against Muslim forces in and around the Holy Land, and the fighting was between European Christians and Middle Eastern Muslims. The Christian forces, as you might imagine, weren't all that eager to have a god that looked more like their enemy, and having one agreed-upon image of their savior helped to unify their religion and worked as proof against the naysayers. Which is to say, Jesus' image as a white man was basically a type of propaganda that was crucial to the Crusaders and their mission. And whether
I just want to add that nowadays I think people would be way more accepting of like changing his image to be something more authentic or something more like closer to his roots. But again, like you wouldn't do that because I mean it's been that image has been spread around for so long, and that's like how we're kind of like wired to see him. Like that wouldn't happen, we would never change it. But maybe, I mean, I don't know, but that's just kind of disappointing that like someone we're supposed to believe in, we don't even have like the clear image of him, like because it's been whitewashed. I mean, I'm like Finnish, so like my Finnish side of the family is as white as they come, and I don't agree with this. Like, yeah, okay, this might be very controversial to say, but you know, I don't really care about like what he looks like to whomever, because it's Jesus, you know, and the meaning stays the same, but you know, it's a bit like it's a bit nasty that he's been like whitewashed because of these like reasons, especially like because of reasons of like something that the Bible doesn't really support, you know?
whether they liked it or not, artists from this time period were gonna get with the program. Why? Well, for starters, selling their artwork would have been nearly impossible if they strayed from the popular and mainstream image of white Jesus. And of course, those artists would almost certainly have faced some serious consequences for going against the church and its accepted depiction of Jesus. In other words, compromising in their rendering of Christ was a hell of a lot better than getting burned for heresy. Slavery was built on the premise that only certain racial groups, particularly white ones, possessed higher order faculties like morality. In this way of thinking, Black Africans had souls somewhere beneath their so-called heathen behaviors and exteriors, and it became Europeans' Christian duty to convert them. A white image of Jesus was an essential weapon in this imagined fight for the souls of the slaves. The European image of Jesus represented whiteness, purity, and white supremacy. And obviously, a more Israeli-looking Jesus wouldn't have worked in the same way. Moreover, depriving Jesus
Comment down below how you feel about this, guys, because it's just it's kind of disappointing a little bit. I mean, I was expecting it, but it's still a bit like,
of his status as an oppressed, dark-skinned minority made it easier for slaveholders to justify their actions, which were, to be sure, in direct contravention of Jesus' goal to free oppressed peoples, as stated in the Gospel of Luke. The image of white Jesus may have been popularized by Europeans in the Middle Ages to support their political and racial agenda against Arabs. But later, Europeans pulled the same trick against their own perceived enemies. In the 19th century, for example, the idea that Jesus was Aryan, or specifically Nordic, arose in accordance with the growing anti-Semitism of the era. Dishonest scholars attempted to separate Jesus from his Jewish roots, culminating in the Nazi ideology of positive Christianity. If you're not
yeah, extremely positive that is.
familiar with that idea, it posited that there was a religious Judaism separate from an ethnic or racial Judaism. Other theories also claimed Galilee, Jesus' hometown, was a non-Jewish region speaking an Indo-European language. Those ideas have since been widely debunked, but only after they were used to help justify the killing of millions of Jews. So at this point, you're probably saying to yourself, don't other racial and ethnic groups of Christians create representations of Jesus that look like themselves? Aren't there Black and Korean versions of Jesus? Why
Are there? Why am I not aware of this? See, oh my god. Why, like, every video I watch on this channel, I'm like, what? I did not know that. I clearly don't know a lot of things.
all the focus on and criticism of white Jesus? And if that's what you're thinking, well, you're right. Sort of. Yes, representations of Jesus are regularly rendered in the likenesses of the groups who worship him because, generally speaking, people like to see themselves in their deity. But unlike white Jesus, these other Jesus variants haven't been used as a tool of oppression throughout history. The whiteness of Jesus is a key part of the narrative that dark-skinned people are bad and thus need to be killed, or at least made to conform to white standards. Whatever else you may think of them, Black and Korean Jesus simply don't carry that historical baggage.
I mean, that's a
In
bold
2001, the year,
way to put it, but okay.
not the movie, the BBC claimed to unveil the real face of Jesus after analyzing excavated skulls of several first-century Jews.
That looks accurate. That looks way more accurate, honestly. Come on.
With computer imaging. Obviously, none of those skulls belong to the man himself, but biblical evidence suggests that Jesus didn't look especially different from others in the region. We say that because of the story in the New Testament, where the infamous kiss of Judas is used to betray Jesus by identifying him to his captors. Were Jesus' looks notably different than everyone else in town, that kiss wouldn't have been necessary. Anyway, the new likeness of Jesus the BBC created was unsurprisingly darker skinned than the mainstream white Jesus depictions. Nonetheless, the network hedged its bets by describing him simply as olive-skinned and swarthy. Those vague terms leave his race ambiguous and allow those devoutly on Team White Jesus to still claim he was just tan rather than Arab.
I'm sorry, but come on. Come on. You can't, like, deny someone's ethnicity.
Despite the BBC's research, Hollywood has generally adhered to the tradition of depicting Jesus as a white guy in film and television. In fact, in the 20-odd films made about Jesus during the 20th century, he has almost exclusively been played by white actors like Willem Dafoe and Christian Bale. It wasn't until the 2015 National Geographic miniseries Killing Jesus that a Middle Eastern man, the Lebanese actor Haz Slayman, was cast as Jesus in a major English language film. So if Christians are right, and Jesus ever does return to Earth, let's all hope he doesn't have a Netflix subscription. So what do you think? And which of these facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, check out some of the Christians are right.
I mean, like, judging by this, for example, like, he still has, like, he still doesn't look completely white. I mean, he's been pretty whitewashed, but I think his facial features reflect on his ethnicity a little bit at least. So, like, if he was, like, blonde and blue-eyed, then it'd be even more disturbing, but the context of this video was just, like, disappointing. I went through all the emotions in this video. But yeah, I really like the way they represented him in this what was this, like a series or?
In 2001, the year, not the movie, the BBC claimed to unveil the real face of Jesus after analyzing excavated.
Yeah. Well, anyways, like, this looks accurate to me, to the time and the place. But, you know, I think everybody could, like, who knows what he looked like in real life. But, you know, I don't know what to say. I think everybody can believe just whatever they want to. I don't really care. But, you know, like, if we're talking about it by, like, logically, then he's not white. It's just he's not white. It's a fact. He cannot be white. Just can't. But yeah, anyways, I need to go to sleep, because if not, I don't know what's gonna happen. But thank you for joining me for this video. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.